So I could take this, invite, thank you for coming to this event. We've had a tremendous amount of things this fall, and this is just another amazing gathering. We have in our department, as many of you know, a very accomplished poet and author, Carrillo, who's going to talk a bit about his book. He did not come here to listen to me, so I'm going to get off the stage and simply to thank Christina, García, Carrillo, Eloy, Urroz, who come to talk about the Francés. So with that, a warm welcome.
Can you guys hear me clearly? Okay, great. I'll switch the microphone. Yeah. Yes, so my name again is Christina Garcia, and I'm assistant professor in the Department of Hispanic Studies, and I'm also affiliate faculty in Latin American and Caribbean Studies and African American Studies. I was very honored that Raul asked me to be on this panel to talk about his work. It's an incredibly rich text. Since I am not a Mexicanista, I embarked on my reading of it initially out of sheer pleasure. So when your job is teaching and writing on literary text, I find that there are two kinds of reading. There are literary texts that might be very productive for you academically, but not necessarily placentero. Some novels, because of the way they are composed, require more labor from their readers. You might have to read a chapter or two before you become fully invested in the text. Whereas reading something that's presumably not in your field, you do so leisurely, you read for the sake of reading. So, reading this novel, as I was from my leisurely armchair, I was very pleased when I was only within the first pages and already hooked. My colleague and friend's novel was turning out to be quite the page turner. And so what I want to emphasize is that this is a very accessible, engaging novel, but at the same time does incredible work in terms of critical issues, social issues that it addresses. Its narrative voice is distinct. Its characters, context, and sequence of events are easy to follow and depicted with an intriguing depth. The narrative proceeds into time and space with the precision and illusion of a realism I find akin to the paintings by the French late 18th century artist Jacques-Louis David. And I reference him because you might be familiar with his canonical paintings of the death of Marat or the death of Socrates. And incidentally, or not, Hotel Francés opens with La muerte de mi madre. Every sentence in the novel, like one of David's neoclassical brushstrokes, is seamless and elegant, producing very clear images and yet ripe with philosophical and poetic introspection. However, unlike the heroic and idealized figures of the neoclassical French painters, Hotel Francés explores the carnal, the repressed, the taboo. Sorry, something got that which Sigmund Freud and Claude Lévi-Strauss designated as the limit between the civil and the uncivil, that which can leave its psychic wounds. Hotel Francés is in large part about revisiting traumatic events. Escribo sobre ella porque su muerte me ha traído a lugares que había querido evitar. The novel demonstrates how the practice of literature can do critical, psychic, and emotional work. And I almost said healing, but I find that doing so reduces the complexity of the text. Hotel Francés is about a deeply dysfunctional family through which the vacuousness of patriarchal institutions and the myths of the nation are exposed. But I want to zoom out for a second, perhaps with a more superficial observation or leisurely reading for pleasure, and then maybe return to some of its more critical themes. So let's talk about the sexiness of the cover and the title. And I was supposed to have a physical copy with me, but you guys can see the cover there. So in its packaging, yes, okay. So in its packaging, you have the matte frosted texture, the thick, creamy vanilla pages, the erotic but tasteful black and white photograph of a woman's chest, and the purple and magenta light up sign of the hotel in what looks like Egyptian style font. And if that were not seductive enough, check out the red pages. Indeed, early in its narrative, there are numerous references to sexual arousal and encounters. The narrator has a predilection for brothels of paying for sex. There is a spectacular performance by a sex worker, Ángela en el Infierno, where the kitsch, the sacred, and the profane meet. You have the 80s band Enigma playing in the background, simulated Catholic flagellation, a lot of shaving cream, and pyrotechnics that commingle to produce a sublime as well as an absurd erotic spectacle. Initially, these passages reminded me of the sexual exploits of Henry Miller or Anite Smith, but within the next few pages, I realized something much different was going on. And I'm going to partially cite from the text. Quería encontrar cuerpos cálidos en los cuales poder refugiarme. Buscaba amor corporal, epidérmico, buscaba el cuerpo de mi madre. Me dediqué al sexo, o mejor dicho, a su fantasma, al deseo, sobre todo a la piel femenina. Necesitaba piel que tocar, respiración que sentir, olor que absorber. Podía sentir al ser humano debajo de esas miserias. While the title, Hotel Francés, might allude to that famous eroticism of the French and illicit encounters in hotels, what we soon discover is that Hotel Francés is not only where the narrator stays during one of his returns to his native Baja California, what would presumably be a return home, but that there isn't, nor was there ever a home per se. The word hotel also remits to hospitality, but what the narrator endured as a child and adolescent was an abusive and inhospitable environment. Buscaba desesperadamente a alguien que me quisiera como mi madre no lo había hecho. Sentí una tristeza muy honda. Salí de la casa de mi madre preguntándome por qué me había tocado nacer en esa familia. If the family, as we know in traditional Latin American letters, has often served as a paradigm with which to reinforce or deconstruct the state, and if the historical institution of marriage has served to determine the legitimate heirs of property and names, then the dysfunction of this family, whose patriarch is a politician, by the way, renders the authority of the nation's political elite false and illegitimate. Al final era primogénito reconocido a regañadientes, heredero de nada, y con el peso de todas las cosas de mi padre. The title, Hotel Francés, is also a reference to his mother's francophilia. Para mí, lo francés era parte de mi madre. Having been born in a remote village, she yearns for a Eurocentric pretension of civilization, what we later see manifested as uncensored displays of racism, classism, and sexism. Later, as an adult, having fled self-exiled himself in the United States, the narrator remains in a condition of unbelonging and discomfort. Los problemas de pertenencia comienzan cuando dejas de pertenecer, cuando sales. It is from that position of unbelonging, the endured inhospitality, that offers the narrator an incredibly ethical and critical perspective. The novel offers a searing critique on the legacy of colonialism in Mexico and the hypocrisy of its upper classes. Certeza de que el mundo está firmemente construido y dividido. Esa era la herencia de México que nos había llegado a través de nuestros padres. Finally, I want to note that the novel is loaded with psychic, mythic, and state archetypes and tropes. The death of the mother, the death of the father, the Oedipal complex, the absent father who doubles as the father of the nation in his role as politician, and the phallus in a ubiquity of erections. Sentí otra erección. De alguna forma me antojó que estaban reverenciando al palo, que era una danza para invocar la fertilidad y que el palo estaría asegurado aquella noche. By the way, that read in context was actually hilarious and very parodic. Through these psychic archetypes in traditional psychoanalysis, the assumption is that if we correctly unpack the symbolic code, we will arrive at the resolution of the individual having under their repressed problems. Hotel Francés does something far more interesting than this. For example, in the proliferation of erections, something happens to the symbolic power of the phallus. It gets deactivated. In other words, rather than achieve individual psychic resolution, the power of that symbolic patriarchal paradigm is undermined. In its exploration of profound sadness, dark psychic and emotional corners, the novel does so with unforgiving clarity. It does not turn away. It demands that its readers see. But that clarity is neither clinical and certainly not heartless. If there is no redemption or facile resolution for its characters, there is redemption in the elegance of its prose. If godless, it is a novel full of grace. Its seduction, pleasure, and aesthetic work against the expected productiveness and utilitarianism demanded by the narrator's father politician. It's a novel that at once provides an ethical lens and implicitly makes the case for reading for the sake of reading. And its narrator is, by the way, Orlando Professor.
Yes. Hola, hola, todo mundo. Well, you have to forgive me because my presentation is going to be, my reading is going to be in Spanish. But before I start reading my text, which actually it's a review that I published a few months ago in Mexico City. And so I will read this review presentation of the book. But before that, let me say a few words in English about my relationship with Raúl. So, as you know, I'm a professor as well from the Citadel. I was wearing the uniform just a few minutes ago. Well, I've been here for 16, 17 years, and it was life-changing the day we both met, at least for me. I think it was the year 2010. Because I was presenting my book, Friction, which was just translated into English, and it was presented at the Citadel with students and professors, just like tonight. And Raúl was there. I think it was 2010. I'm not quite sure. And then he introduced himself, right? And since then, I have to say, he has become my best friend in Charleston. It's now 12 years of friendship. And so just for you to know, when you live in exile, you know, no matter where you are, France, Italy, Spain, or Mexico, it's never easy to live in another country when you spend already half of your life in a different one. So this kind of friendship makes your life a lot easier and lighter. Okay, this is for those of you who don't know what it means to live in another country. You know, when you have sometimes homesickness and nostalgia and all that stuff. At least I have it sometimes. Anyways, a few words about before I read my text is that this book, I read it twice. First as a manuscript, because we share our manuscripts, and I was privileged to read it as a manuscript, and I could see the progress, the struggle of the artist with form. I'm always very interested in form as a final product. And first manuscript, it was chaotic because the dysfunction of this family, it's so chaotic and such a mess that I could see why it was so difficult for Raúl to write this novel. Okay, so, but then he realized that he knew to give it form, which is always difficult to create form out of nothing, you know, and to make it meaningful. And so I saw how Raúl, several months, I don't know, maybe a year or so, he worked with this book so hard, because he needed to express something deep, and it's discomforting. Okay, so you have to know that this book, just like Christina said, is not for every appetite. Okay, it's for strong taste. Okay, so yeah. So you have to know this before you start the reading, but I truly recommend the book. Now I will explain why, and I will read my text very slowly because I know some of you are learning Spanish. Yeah, so I will do my best to make it clear. Okay, so it says, Hotel Francés, la cuarta novela de Raúl Carrillo-Arciniega y Premio Internacional de Narrativa 2021. Well, yeah, we have to say that he won this important prize in Mexico. This book consigue algo involuntario, iluminar con brutal intensidad la hediondez, la violencia, la corrupción y el racismo imperante de México. Y digo involuntario, pues la novela, paradójicamente, no trata sobre México. Hotel Francés versa sobre los padres de Ricardo Arnau, el protagonista y narrador de esta historia espeluznante. A través de ellos, y solo en segunda instancia a través de sus hermanos, Carrillo-Arciniega logra una sinécdoque de mi país, un ejercicio similar al que hiciera otro novelista mexicano al que yo admiro, que se llama Enrique Serna, con El vendedor de silencio, su última novela, es decir, otra sinécdoque de mi país, de México. Ambas novelas, la de Raúl y la de Serna, ambas novelas son a su manera una radiografía de mi país en los años 60 y los años 70. Difícil encontrar una novela más fuerte y a la vez repulsiva. He ahí, no obstante, su dostoyevskiana sublimidad. Dostoyevskiana, from Dostoyevsky. Carrillo-Arciniega sublima a través de la forma artística lo peor de los seres humanos. La execrencia pura de mis compatriotas mexicanos, en particular la de los padres de Ricardo, el protagonista. Hotel Francés, como ya dije, no es para cualquier apetito. Quien imagina una novela más o menos funcional, este relato le dará una cuchillada en el esternón. No hay resquicio, no hay momento de alegría, de placidez, y ni siquiera una página de sosiego en la vida de Ricardo. Todo es, desde que nació, since he was born, hell, infierno. Ricardo no ha conocido sino las heces del inframundo mexicano, a pesar, sí, de ser un niño rico, a pesar de tenerlo todo en un país desigual, un país corrupto y clasista. Mas eso que le ocurre no es, a pesar de todo, su culpa. Él no ha tomado esas malas decisiones que abultan en la novela. La culpa es de Silvia, la madre, y de Enrique, el padre, que no hicieron sino destruirle la existencia a Ricardo desde que nació. Hay que decir también que Carrillo-Arciniega logra describir las cosas tal y como fueron, sin clichés, sin maniqueísmos o asignando culpas a posteriori para justificar el destino de Ricardo. En muchas novelas solemos presenciar las erradas decisiones ante los grandes dilemas de la existencia. Aquí leemos, sin embargo, una historia donde son otros, los padres, quienes te destruyen, te joden la vida. Los padres. Por cierto, pasaron seguido. Si acaso algo consigue salvar a Ricardo Arnau del horror, es la posibilidad de contarla, de contar esta historia, y lo hace con crudeza, sin cortapisas y a ratos, sí, de manera abyecta. Y voy a citar, I'm gonna quote. Yo hubiera querido tener la familia de otros, la armonía de otros, en los que todo está bien, en los que no hubiera falsas pretensiones de reconocimiento. Una familia con roles funcionales y esa pretensión de que todo estaba bien. Pero el universo, por alguna razón, se había confabulado para ponerme en medio de una familia más próxima al caos, a la indiferencia, pero sobre todo a la violencia intrafamiliar. End of quotation. Recapitulemos qué le ha acaecido a Ricardo Arnau, the young man. A los 11 años, el chofer oaxaqueño lo viola. Y al poco tiempo la madre también lo viola con el extravagante pretexto de probar su hombría. Según la interpretación a posteriori del narrador, no habría nada peor para Silvia que un hijo maricón. Y si el hijo en cuestión ya fue violado, ergo, había que comprobar que no se había hecho homosexual, por supuesto. Eso es el peor de los maleficios para una madre machista como la suya. Dicho esto, es plausible que aparte de la locura de la madre, exista otro aspecto soterrado, y es que el padre de Ricardo, senador de Baja California y político prominente del PRI, no ha sino indirectamente solapado esta violación al haber escapado de las garras de su temible mujer. Cabe decir que primero ha huido de Rosa, su primera esposa, diagnosticada con esquizofrenia. Es justo por la ausencia de este padre, conjetura un Ricardo Arnau ya adulto, que la madre lo ha utilizado sexualmente como sustituto del padre. En este sentido, es notable la capacidad psicoanalítica del narrador para una y otra vez desmenuzar el origen psíquico de los problemas de sus progenitores y por ende sus problemas. Esto lo lleva a cabo con una suerte de empecinamiento que francamente no había leído yo antes en la literatura latinoamericana. Carrillo-Arciniega analiza hasta el cansancio cada ángulo y arista, cada acción y cada efecto de esa acción, como para asegurarse de que no existen otras posibles motivaciones ocultas. Por ejemplo, cuando en la tercera parte de la novela, Ricardo Arnau deduce que su padre no lo abandonó de niño porque simplemente no deseaba repetir el abandono que había sufrido de su propio padre. Ricardo infiere que, and I quote, la decisión de Enrique, su padre, por hacerse cargo del hijo, o sea, de él mismo, fue hecha por el abandono de su propio padre. Es decir, el padre de Ricardo fue abandonado por su padre. Y por eso es que no abandona a esa señora, a esa mujer loca, Silvia. Silvia había ponderado esto o tal vez no, pero la causa verdadera del por qué había decidido que seguiría con Silvia, con la madre, fue demostrarle a su padre cómo era un padre genuino, un verdadero padre. Era su manera de reprocharle su ausencia. No deja de llamar la atención el hecho de que, a pesar de su indiscutible penetración psicológica, Arnau no se dé cuenta que justo son esas las mismas razones por las cuales él, hoy, después de todo, no ha abandonado a sus hijos 40 años después. Años después de la violación de la madre, viene el abuso a las sirvientas del hogar y más tarde la vida prostibularia de Ricardo, a la que se hace adicto gracias al dinero malavenido del padre priista, quien de manera oblicua necesita asegurarse que su hijo, el único varón, no se ha hecho qué. No obstante, hay algo aún peor, mucho peor en este infierno de degradaciones: las golpizas de la madre, las vejaciones consuetudinarias. Ricardo no es alto, no es firme, no es astuto y tampoco es cabrón como Enrique, su padre. Y para colmo, quiere ser escritor, específicamente poeta. Esa es la puntilla para Silvia, quien a lo largo del Hotel Francés no hará sino maltratar a su hijo hasta desangrarlo. Uno no puede sino preguntarse, ¿y por qué no ha huido este adolescente? O bien, ¿por qué vuelve él a la casa materna después de tantos años? Porque hay que decirlo, la novela arranca con la muerte de la madre. Those few first pages. Arranca, empieza con la muerte de la madre, como en El extranjero de Albert Camus, ¿verdad? Que todos aquí conocemos. Y solo a partir del regreso de Ricardo a La Paz, Baja California, se destapa esa cloaca que he ido resumiendo aquí. Ricardo tiene que ver muerta físicamente a su madre para por fin reconciliarse con su pasado. Cuando 10 años antes Enrique, su padre, fallece, el hijo, Ricardo, ha decidido no asistir a los funerales del padre, pues lo último que en ese momento quisiera es tener que encarar otra vez, face a la madre. No quiere eso. La enfrentará por fin cuando esté muerta y pueda contarnos la historia de su vida. Insisto, solo lo hará de refilón, oblicuamente, pues esta es sobre todo la historia de los padres, la de sus infancias y juventudes imaginadas durante los años 60 y 70, hasta su posterior encuentro amoroso. El encuentro amoroso del papá y la mamá de Ricardo, él imagina. Es una novela donde se imagina cómo pudieron conocerse papá y mamá, el cual Ricardo imagina de la peor manera posible. Ricardo imagina una joven Silvia, su madre, rastrera, escaladora social, resentida, racista, déspota y agresiva, dispuesta a todo con tal de conquistar al político prominente. Una mujer decidida a aceptar las innumerables amantes de su esposo, siempre y cuando sea capaz de, claro, eventualmente destruirlas, cosa que hará en repetidas ocasiones. En el Hotel Francés no hay pudor, no hay consideraciones al buen gusto ni medias tintas para decir las cosas de manera bonita, de manera bien, más o menos suaves o edulcoradas. Tenemos una gran novela mexicana. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Eloy. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming here tonight. I really appreciate the readings, and I'm flattered, of course, in a good way, I guess, because we have to be flattered in a good way always. And yes, I mean, I don't know, but what I would like to do right now is read the first chapter of the book, to see you have the rhythm of the narration, and after that we can actually have some questions and answers, or if you want to say something, ask something, or whatever you want to say, or if here my colleagues want to just add a little bit more, or say anything else. Yes. Okay, yeah.
Sí, sí.
Bueno, como dijo Eloy, and that's going to be in Spanish, of course, it's part of it. It starts with the death of the mother, you know. I mean, and it's the reflection, you know, when Ricardo hears or finds out that her mom has died. And I'm just apparently this is not working, right? Yes, is it? Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna start recording. And I'm gonna read the first pages, because when that's Eloy can attest, when we are writing and we're novelists and trying to write something, you always want your first 4 pages to be as powerful as you can. So, I mean, it took me like, I don't know, a year just to do this. I'm so proud of my study. Uno. La muerte de mi madre me tomó por sorpresa, no porque nunca lo hubiera imaginado. ¿Qué hijo no fantasea con la muerte de sus padres? Sino porque no lo esperaba tan pronto, tan abruptamente. Como ella solía argumentar de mí, hierba mala nunca muere. La oí proferir esta frase cuando se dirigía a mí para descalificarme. Después de todo, mi madre solo tenía 69 años cuando murió, un año menos de los que tenía mi padre cuando una úlcera le reventó el estómago. Ahora trato de recordar algo sobre ella, una pista, un indicio que me lleve a comprender algo que no he podido ver después de más de 40 años de haberla conocido. Mi hermana, Nora, ha sido el heraldo negro que me ha comunicado las noticias de la muerte de mis padres. En ninguna de las dos ocasiones he podido llorar y eso lo ha hecho más complicado todavía. Cuando murió mi padre, solo escribí un texto en el que le reprochaba su ausencia y decepción ante la vida de un hijo. Ninguno de los dos me buscó y todo me autoexilió. Ahora que ella ha muerto, me siento más obligado a recuperar su recuerdo. Creo haberla querido, creo haber sentido algo en un momento, pero no estoy seguro de que eso se hubiera llamado amor, o tal vez sí, dado que, como dijo G, solo un tonto pensaría que los sentimientos no son una cosa complicada. Escribo sobre ella porque su muerte me ha traído a lugares que había querido evitar durante todo este tiempo. Recuerdo una cita de Patrick Suskind de la novela El perfume que leí a los 20 años. La verdadera libertad solo comienza cuando no hay padres. La verdadera libertad, entonces, se inaugura con la orfandad. Sin padres a quienes decepcionar, no hay nadie que sufra por los errores que el hijo cometió para tratar de alegrarlos. Basta decir que todo hijo decepciona a sus padres en algún momento de su vida. Con mi huida y el poco contacto que tengo con la península de Baja California, o que he querido tener, pensé que se acabaría cualquier nexo con una tierra espuria que tuve que dejar por muchas razones que no vienen a cuento narrar. Nunca me contaron sus vidas. Dejé de verlos de manera cotidiana desde hace más de 20 años. Solo hablábamos esporádicamente por teléfono. Por ejemplo, cuando los aviones impactaron en las Torres Gemelas de Nueva York, me llamaron a Kentucky, donde estudiaba el doctorado en estudios latinoamericanos, para saber si no habían muerto. Después de corroborar mi existencia, no me hablaron más. Mi interés en su vida era mínimo. Solo saber si aún respiraban, y a medida que no lo han hecho, Nora es quien me lo ha comunicado. Creo que mi madre es la que se merece primero una historia. Es quien debe ser recordada, aunque en el resentimiento, ahora que el resentimiento se ha ido y que la verdadera libertad ha comenzado. Then I invite you guys to say something. Was or not, or to want. Yes. Then,
And I do have a question, can you tell us a little bit about the difference in your writing process between poetry and novel? I mean, not even speaking.
yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I started as a poet. Yeah, I think when we are young adolescents, we always try to say something, no? And I started like that. But then when I was kind of writing my poems, a friend of mine told me when I was kind of like, I don't know, 20, 22 or something, your poems are so long. Why don't you write something? Something like that, you know? Because you are telling stories, and I think you should write narrative. And I was kind of like, no, man, I'm a poet, you know, that's the way I am, and there's nothing to change. That's my thing, no? And I was kind of, okay, no, but you should try, okay. And I was kind of like, okay, so maybe I can do so. I could do something like that. And then, I mean, I started writing, and because I mean, sometimes you need a story, and sometimes you need something. The thing with narrative for me is that when I'm writing narrative, it's because I know what I'm going to tell. I know the story that I want to convey, and all the characters, everything. And when you are writing a poem, and Eloy is a poet, is also a poet. And so I just try to say, or to convey some kind of feelings. And with the rhythm also, it's for me, it's so important. And that's kind of the main division that I would say, that when I'm writing poems, I try to just convey feelings, and when I'm writing novels, I want to say something terrible.
I have a question. And it's also relating to your writing process, and not so much the difference between narrative fiction and poetry, but you're a literary critic. You're a literary critic and you're a professor of literature. So when you write your criticism and when you do your creative writing, are they two different writers? Is it two different processes? Does the literary critic or the professor ever inhibit the creative writing? Or do you see them not so separate or so compartmentalized?
That's a good question, because I mean, when you're writing novels, that's the good thing about novels, that you actually can say whatever you want. And then when you are just being a critic, I mean, you have to just talk about ideas and convey, I mean, all those ideas that are behind things, and also one of the aspects that I have and that I like is philosophy as well, and then for me, it's just exploring more ideas that I kind of extract from the readings. And that's why also, I mean, at the beginning, for example, this novel, he told me, yeah, you are too philosophical in this novel, so you have to put it out, because this is a novel, and was one of his advices, for example, And I was trying to overthink things, I mean, the process of what I was kind of thinking, trying to just do some philosophy there and there. I mean, and I still do, honestly. I still have some kind of that vibe in the readings, but it's kind of the process. That's why I find the novel format pretty good for me, because I can just relate everything.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense. I like that idea. Yeah.
Yes.
Talk a little about the relationship you have with the protagonist. The one that Francés, I haven't read the book yet, but that first line, what those are the relationship you have. So it's not that you sort of in narrative fiction, you get angry with them sometimes, you do things that you go. I constantly read about writers who talk about the characters sort of doing things and almost, it's like an involuntary process. So what's your relationship like with this character?
I mean, the relationship is my relationship with this character is pretty personal, I guess. I mean, it has some kind of autobiographical aspects, but at the same time, I'm trying to redefine the character. And always when you are kind of looking for something that you don't remember, those memories that are back, so you are trying to reshape them and then try to connect with that person that you were, and then, but at the same time, that gives you the authority to do whatever you want with the novel. I mean, that's why this process is a creative novelistic process, because it's not that, I mean, you actually are parting from certain experiences that you had, certain people that you met, but at the same time, you are redesigning the way life could be also. Yeah, but it's pretty, but for me, I mean, all the characters, I'm kind of there all the time, with my characters, and obviously I'm kind of the protagonist. Always I imagine myself being the protagonist. I mean, trying to just deal with all this kind of problems. It's like when I go to the movies and I see Batman, I believe that I'm Batman.
We also
there's chaos at first, and you have to get started with substance and anxiety. But so have you ever started out with a view of where you want the character to go, and then at the end you can find that you have a certain fate in mind for them, and then when during the writing process, you end up there over here, and you did what you want them to be, but specifically worse.
I mean, no, it's a good question. I mean, this novel, the Francés, I knew everything. I mean, I knew at least the whole plot. So, and what you do with the novel is sometimes you can go here and there, and you are revisiting certain aspects that are pretty novelistic or not, because I mean, we all live lives and those kind of things, but certain elements of your life is not cool, to write, and then so you have to look for those moments. In those moments, I mean, sometimes you think this is the moment that I'm going to just narrate, but after that you realize that no, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's nothing that you want, and then, but yes, you have certain flexibility just to go here and there, and that happens. And happened in my previous novel of the Tennessee River. In that novel, I didn't know how I was going to just recreate it, and then yes, so it ended up in different ways that I was expecting. Yes.
I just realized something about what he was saying, and I think what is really brave and valuable is that there's some passages or aspects that other writers will avoid because are so dark that it's better not to talk about those aspects or passages, but deep inside that you have to put there because that's part of the novel. Otherwise, you are not true to the story. You are betraying your story. And I think that's something that needs courage and also gives, at least to this book, this power, I mean, as I said before, it's for strong appetites, honestly. Like if you have read Dostoevsky, that's what I mentioned. Dostoevsky reminds me, of course, Dostoevsky, it's about the poor people or Dickens, but this is about the rich people in Mexico. And you can see it's as bad as the poor people. It makes no difference. Human lives have this good and bad, I won't say evil, but just dark zones, And I also, if I may ask a question to Christina that I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned, and I'm very curious, you mentioned about el tema de lo patriarcal.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, don't you think in a way the mother is part of it?
Of course.
She was like a macho.
Actually,
She is like the most patriarchal, maybe more than the father.
Yeah,
Which is kind of
it's a system, it's a legacy, it's not just individuals. I mean, ella lo ejerce con poder. Yeah, she's the worst, but yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. So you said you knew kind of where you wanted to start, what the plot was. What did you do when you were getting towards the end? Did you ever have any moments where you're like, okay, I know that I want to fit these events in to get to the plot, but you didn't know like what to write to make all of those events tie and get to the conclusion?
Actually, this book ends in a pretty cool way because I mean I didn't expect that, and I was planning another different end. But once I was writing that, so you remember this event, this other event, and you tie them together, and it says, this is gonna be awesome, because it's gonna end in this way, and it's gonna be just a circle, it's gonna be round, and everything is gonna just fit into place. But it's some moments of realization. It's something that you have, and there, and you say, yes, this is the moment that I'm gonna end that. And you were expecting, no, I mean, probably I'm gonna end this and that. But the narration is taking you there, but at the same time, it's the events that you are kind of looking in the world, in your memories, in the things you live, and the things that are there in the unconscious, and then you want to just make it that. But yes, definitely, it changed every time that you are expecting something, and also the rhythm of the narration dictates you a lot of things, like if you are just in this way or in the other way.
I was just thinking, I wanted to ask you, because I felt in reading it that there was a sort of rhythm of that you return to certain scenes.
Yeah.
Like you start something and then you talk about it and then you start the next section and then you return, like you go back. Antes otra vez. Was that something that you were conscious of, or was that part of the process?
I think it's part of the process because when you are writing a novel, sometimes you forget what you want.
Wait, but that was, oh, we're back here, but it's not redundant.
No, it's not. It's not.
You know, but
Yeah.
it was a nice, reading it, it was a nice rhythm, you know. and
Exactly. No, yeah.
back And revisit.
And I don't remember who said actually for being a good writer, you need a good memory. Yeah, I'm saying that. Right now. Yeah. But that's true. I mean, you need a good memory because you have to remember the 100 pages that you wrote and things that you actually wrote, and so you don't repeat yourself, or at least give a little bit more of information that you needed. You know?
And it's incredibly intricate.
Exactly.
And divided.
Yeah, no, it was kind of on my purpose. That piece.
If I may say something about what you were
Yeah.
talking about, I think you're absolutely right. The book is like a vortex, because it comes back and comes back to the same thing. So this is the monster. And Ricardo, the narrator, he doesn't avoid talking about the monsters. He over and over again from different angles, right? Next chapter, you think like, well, it's over. Next, no, let's go back.
Because in a way, everything happens in the first chapter.
In a nutshell,
That's
that's what I was gonna say.
Most
Those
sensational, you're like.
those first two pages are the novel,
Yeah.
and then everything, those things are in a nutshell.
Yeah.
On those first two pages, the themes.
Mhm.
And they just gonna expand and expand and expand.
It's sort of on the same track, but it's gonna be so hard to know what to include, what not to include in the editing process. Do you ever, I guess, particularly in this book, look back and think, "Oh, wish I had put this in, or I wish I had left this out"? Did you have that?
I'm not overly critical about my work, so I just leave it there. So, and I don't go back just to see what's going on. So, no, I don't do that. I do that quickly. Yeah.
I mean, so say, go back to that chaotic model, the very secret strands of the chaotic model that was suggested, and also the iterative model, I think that's a piece. And I know that we read in a lot of different areas, but when you talk about economic, I do think about chaos as far as the theory, that's what it's all about. It's about these factors, these things that even never are the same way. And they look like just a really deep order. Is that just, was there any of that going on in your head, or is this just me spelling out?
I mean, now that you mentioned it, it came to my head. Before that, I mean, he told me about this chaos, like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I don't remember. So I just wanted just to recreate that or put some order to that chaos that he said, and then that was my purpose. Just to battle with the words and the situations, just to do something that is connected at the same time, but revealing more information that I needed just to say, because I wanted to write everything according to me, and I'm going to write everything here. That was my task,
Yeah, I remember telling him that since this is in itself such a chaotic story, you have to shed some light for readers, because otherwise it's like, please, hold on, slow down. Okay, like he said, he wanted to put everything, and it's a lot, but a lot of feelings too, a lot of emotions. Everything is like, it's tough, So I said, just give some light to the reader. Make this chaos a little, I don't know, not easier to read, but manageable, maybe. Yes. Yeah, that's a question.
Well, we have an ear in the well-trained experience with sound, which I imagine plays a big role in the novel too, that there are prose rhythms and how the passion and the narrative is conveyed through the sounds and rhythms of the narrative, not just things. So was there ever points in the writing of this where you look because of sound, the prose rhythms, where you yourself were taken with the emotion, or the opposite, where you sat back and said, no, that doesn't sound right, that has to be changed?
Yeah, definitely. It's a battle, no? It's a battle because you want to sound the sound to be perfect also. That's why you go and craft the line and then put some vowels here. No, this I'm repeating too much the R sound. This is two C's combined together. But at the same time, you want to convey something. And yes, you want the rhythm, the phrasing there. So that just by saying that it takes you to some place, no, like emotional place, but at the same time you want to say the story that you want to say, you know, and that's what we do also with poetry. I mean, with novels, what you have to just do is try to narrate something. I mean, you have to say something, and you have to tell the story. But in at the same time, since I come from that poetry background, I try to do that. I mean, I try to just emphasize it in the phrasing, in changing words. Yes, I have changed a lot of words, and I just let some of the words that I like how they sound, for example, no, regardless of anything, because I like that, you know, that combination. I mean, I try to just see how many E's, I's, U's I have in the sentence, and yeah, and because that makes that rhythm happens. But at the same time, and as I mentioned, you need to tell the story, you know, and see something.
That's something that's clearly recent. Poetry in the novel America very different forms. But certainly having read some of your poetry, there's never a problem with what you're doing in the poetry. Okay. And I'm wondering, in the experience of executing these forms, if there really is that much difference from right now to what you're doing. Length, okay, or not. But it seems to me that a lot of it also in the experience might be quite a bit the same. Is that a fair question?
No, it is, yes. Yes.
I don't know. You know, sometimes you look at these two mediums that are so diametrically opposed. I'm not sure that's all the case.
No, it's not the case.
So, sorry if I may, because this is something what I found most fascinating about the text, and I have not read Rawls' poetry, I will, but I kept thinking, because it's so crafted, like the level of craft that you would apply to poetry is applied to the novel. Like every sentence has that same degree of craft, but it's still prose. And so it's very they're just like you said, like you just described, all of that work and that attention to sound and to rhythm, but it's not, because some novels, a lot of the novels that I work with sort of blur the boundary between poetry and narrative. They blur those boundaries and they try to do something else. And this is like a novel's novel. Like it's very much narrative fiction. And it's not sort of, and there's these metaphors, but they're not so dense, right?
Yes.
That they become impenetrable. It's very transparent and yet so artful. And so it's just a really interesting sort of, you know.
It's not full of metaphors.
No,
It's very what it is.
transparent, but
It
it's
is what
still
it is.
very artful. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I had a comment and a question, and so thinking back to what a little thing about form, I think in relation to the comment and form, it was going back, because his novel started in going back, right, a return, right? And your other and the river, the two, was exile, going away, and then returning. I guess both the contents and in form, so you're thinking of how both play with each other, exile and return. And then the question from, I think the way we mentioned, readership. Do you think about, how would you think about poetry readership, your readers? If I ever something you are thinking about who is reading one way, or is that ever there? You're thinking of reading about it, is that ever you the reader? How does that work for you?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because always you think about your reader, that you are the perfect reader, no? The writer is the perfect reader, and if you don't understand, it's not my problem with you, no? Because you are not the perfect reader, no? But you have to realize that you are not that reader, no? I mean, that's why it's so important for us when you share your work, no? Because then you realize that you are the perfect reader for you, but not for the rest of the people, no? And then, for example, I don't know, it's something that Eloy told me, like an advice, no? I think you have a lot of L names. No, and I'm kind of going back here and there, and I don't know who's Lorena, who's Lucia, who's Lorenza.
We have a lot of.
Then and you were kind of, for me, it's kind of, I know who Lorenza is, who Lucia is, and who whatever is. And then you don't realize that you put a lot of L's there. And then it's something that you have to just be attentive to. And yeah, because I mean, for me, I would be the perfect reader, but yes, definitely you have to be attentive to the demands of the readership that you want to just, because at the end, I mean, this work I want to be read, it's not just because I want to just put it there and that's it. I want that accessibility to people, and yes, sometimes we are so arrogant that we believe that we are the perfect reader, but we are not readers. That's why I want to share the work, and it's important for our work as writers. And at the beginning, I mean, when I'm writing, I don't care, but when I'm just editing, in the most painful process is the editing part. I mean, because when you are writing, it's fun, and you here, there, blah, blah, blah. I want to put this character doing that. Then you are just laughing, but the editing process is the real pain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and I was thinking too, well, I remember James Shaw saying when actually his character, Stephen Delus, in A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, he says that he thinks that the artist has to keep some distance to his work, distance. But at the same time, if you keep too much distance, I was thinking about what you were saying, you can lose the intensity. So you have to have a balance, I think, or at least I try to do that. I think that's what I would, it was so intense at the beginning, that manuscript. And I realized right away, he needs to, he's too close to this, everything, he needs to keep some distance and then keep some balance. But at the same time, you don't want to lose the intensity, the emotion, the power, right? So yeah, it's a difficult balance.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, and we have to just exercise all the time. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
One of the things which is most intriguing to me is that you deal with sometimes direct and sometimes indirect is political violence in the tonality of the public. And this is something which also puts it to me because in Argentina, I have a big most disappeared, at least during the military regimes. We will never. And Mexico has had its share of desaparecidos, some very good reasons. And because we write, I think, particularly well about them. Southern nationality. Thinking of these cases that Argentina has, that Mexico has, these deaths that are never resolved. There is no thing. How does that?
I mean, definitely, I mean, death in Mexican culture is, the Day of Death, for example, all this kind of way we address death, and we try to just exercise how we approach to that, and also the political problems that we have in Mexico. It's always something that is there, and in the novel, particularly talks about people in the power, and how you from it within, because always when you are just talking about political protest, the political turmoil, those kind of things, you always think yourself in the vulnerable position, but when you are in the part where the violence is being exercised by your family, then gives you a sense of shamefulness in a way, and then you have to just realize that you are part of the oppressors. And then you have to say, yeah, but what can I do? Right? And I just remember when I wanted just to study literature and those kind of things. And one of my aunts told me, why you are dándole patadas al pesebre, which is, I don't know how to translate that. How do you translate that? I don't know. I mean, just kicking your way of living, no? And then, don't you realize who you are standing with? And that's, you know, a free person, whatever. And yeah, but that's problem. That's problematic for me. And it is constant. Yes, it's an issue. Yes.
I also wanted to tell you something, that quotation quote from Patrick Susskind,
Yeah.
that you become free when your parents passed away. That's when finally, when you're an orphan, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's when you finally are
Free.
free. I have to say that I kind of disagree. Because, and I was really thinking about your reading and kind of disagree, because I really think guys, girls, everyone here, that no, we have an eternal mother and an eternal father here forever. Your parents might die, might live, might whatever. But you die with your mom and your dad here, for good and for bad.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're ever an orphan.
No, actually, yeah, no, that's one of the problems. I mean, in the novel, the guy is an orphan, it's an authentic orphan, no? I mean, that's why he's kind of talking about freedom when you don't know who your parents are. But in this case, yes. So in the novel, yes, you have the character. He has the internal fathers. Lacan would say the grand ones will be older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions? Suggestions?
Just no. Thank you so much. Then I would like sí, no, gracias, gracias. Okay.